Hello and welcome back to round 3. We are on the draw. Our opponent doesn't have a companion again. So we could be in an ad nauseum rematch. We could be up against Tron. Our hand is reasonably strong because we have the Force of Negation, but a one-lander I think is a bit too risky even on the draw. So we have 31 other lands in our deck. And we have no cantrip in this opening hand. If we do draw a second land, we have 2 cantrips. 31. So we're going to hit about 50% of the time, a little bit less. I could talk myself into keeping this, but I think the upside. With London Mulligan, I think it's a mulligan. Alright, this is pretty clearly a mulligan, no lands. This is a keep. We'll get rid of a Factor Fiction and Ice Fanghodel maybe. So I guess the question is, let's go ahead and let's get rid of both Factor Fictions. With Yorion as our way to recoup the value, we want to keep as many cantrips in our deck as possible. Blackleaf Cliffs. This was not expected. This is just traditional Jund, I guess. Interesting. It's a good thing we didn't get rid of one of our 1-mana cantrips, so they could have tried to completely mana screw us. I think that that's pretty unreasonable for them to attempt now, although I don't think taking Astrolabe would be a bad choice for our opponent here. Ice Fanghodel also can be a pretty big headache for Tarmogoyf, so I wouldn't blame them for taking that either. Alright, draw a second land. Definitely nice. Play this Astrolabe so we have good mana. Draw another Astrolabe, basically the best draw. Just our plan will be to just, march our way up to 5 lands and then slam that Yorion. There's not much the opponent can do. Decay, also a very solid draw. Another Wilderness Wreck is not a solid draw. Our opponent could have Liliana of the Veil here, maybe. I'm trying to think of what hands they would consider keeping that don't have a turn 2 play. They may have kept a hand that has a bunch of removal against us, but we did reveal Yorion, so I think that wouldn't have been wise of them. They do want an aggressive hand. Feels like Liliana. If it feels like Liliana, it's probably Liliana. We do have the Clean Decay, so they'll we'll get rid of a redundant Wilderness Reclamation, and then we'll just decay it, so not the end of the world. Maybe they're a little bit mana flooded. It's a possibility. I guess we'll decay now. Not really a reason not to. We don't want them to plus. We want to keep all of our lands. If they have a second Liliana, it's unfortunate. I think it is possible they have second Liliana. No, they've got nothing. Probably a trophy, if I had to guess. We'll get Triome in the off chance that they... I guess we could have gotten Watery Grave there, maybe, because Triome cycles, which gives it more late game versatility. I was gonna say in the off chance that they like end up Maelstrom pulsing our Astrolabe, which is honestly not the worst play for our opponent here. Yorion just drawing 2 cards makes pulsing the Astrolabes actually like a positive trade. Basically, it's the better of 2 evils for our opponent, essentially. Is our opponent... What are they doing here? Are they Kolaghan's commanding us? They are. Okay. That's also pretty reasonable. We'll Growth Spiral now. Draw a trophy. Cannot cast. So pass the turn. Yikes. Bloodbraid into Goyf. Alright. So likely going to have to trophy Goyf. Bloodbraid can stick around. We do have the Yorion, so that can kind of basically block the Bloodbraid, or at least trade with Bloodbraid plus like the Bolt, ideally, and then we'll be basically at card parity. We have a lot of good draws that can pull us really far ahead. Something like Factor Fiction would be really good with the Wilderness Reclamation play. Uro would be really good because our opponent doesn't have any graveyard hate currently. Even Cryptic Command would be great. And then a land lets us cast our Yorion, so there's not too much we can complain about. We'll just go ahead and get an island here. Want to play it safe with our life total, so not going to shock. We'll exile Astrolabe. Remain's not a bad draw. It'll just be a redraw, and our opponent does have some expensive spells, so just being able to remand them could be pretty nice. Ooze. I'm going to remand just because I want to cycle it. Wilderness Reclamation, not a good draw. We don't have a lot of great ways to leverage it in this spot. Ooze is pretty good. There's not much fodder, but it does shut off one of our best draws, which is Uro. So it's also reasonably strong against a Factor Fiction. For opponent attacks, we're blocking. Cryptic's a good draw. The question is, how do we want to use it? The answer is we probably want to pass. We'll play this Wilderness Rec and pass. We're not going to get the value from it this turn, but there are definitely situations where we might draw, a Factor Fiction or something like that, and being able to kind of go off in that spot would be really nice. Our opponent's going to get to eat some cards. We have 1 creature, they have 1 creature. Notably, that means that they cannot attack into Yorion yet, which is good for us. If they attack, we block, and then post damage, they go for a removal spell. We could consider Cryptic Bounce Yorion, draw a card. Yorion then gets to redraw off Astrolabe. We fizzle their removal spell, and we get to replay Yorion. We have double Reclamation. We also just have to counter this Liliana of the Veil, so counter draw. Push wouldn't be bad. Snap is not great unless our opponent gets ambitious with their Scavenging Ooze. Last turn they didn't when they saw that we had mana up. So my guess is they won't again. They're playing pretty cautious. In which case Snapcaster Mage is literally just a blocker, but we'll continue to hope that our opponent gives us a spot to cast it. Double Reclamation also means that if we draw Mystical Teachings, we can cast it and flash it back without our opponent having any chance of getting priority. So it looks like they have the bull. We're gonna accept this trade. Or it's possible they don't have it and they just wanted to. Okay. We're going to bounce Ooze, I think. So we'll get in. End step, we'll float a bunch of mana. Return target permanent to its owner's hand, draw a card. Bouncing Ooze here lets us play Snapcaster Mage and target Abrupt Decay before our opponent has a chance to activate Ooze. I think we are pulling ahead here. Possible our opponent has push. Okay. Growth Spiral. Draw Misty. Okay. We will just untap and pass. So we can snap Cryptic and fetch Cryptic to the top. Croxa is fine. We are going to play Snapcaster Mage in response, targeting Cryptic Command. So we're gonna go ahead, fetch a Mystic Sanctuary, put the other Cryptic on top. Then we're gonna Cryptic bounce Astrolabe, draw a card. just for the clean 2-for-1. Return target permanent to its owner's hand. Draw a card. All right, our opponent scoops it up. Post board, we want these Veil of Summers for discard spells. Dead of Winter seems pretty solid, being able to clean up a lot of their bigger creatures. Aether Gust seems good as a way to remove a Tarmogoyf, as well as Renin 6, which can be one of their more troubling cards. Pulse of Marasa could be okay. Being able to get back Ice Fang Kotal seems very good, but the life gain doesn't seem as relevant, so it's basically just a 3-mana situational regrowth, and it also is a very weak draw in the face of any graveyard hate, such as Spellbomb and Scavenging Ooze, which I expect post-board. So I would not bring in Pulse of Marasa for this matchup. Cards that are weak. We did see Liliana of the Veil, so Force of Negation is quite a bit stronger. I don't really want to cut any big top end except for Nexus. I don't think we need Nexus. I think our deck wins fine without it in this matchup. Assassin's Trophy gives our opponent an extra land, and we have a lot of answers to their spells with Aether Gust post board anyways. I could see cutting Archmage's Charm on the draw. I could also see cutting one Remand on the draw. So these are the cards we want to bring in. Let's cut 2 Remands on the draw. We can cut one. We could consider a Force Negation. I think Force Negation on their Planeswalkers is probably too. Well, it is card disadvantage, so let's just go ahead and cut Force Negation. Against the Luris Jund decks or Luris black-red prowess in general, Force of Negation is pretty weak. But against Liliana of the Veil specifically, I think Force of Negation has a little bit more stock, which is why I wouldn't instantly cut it, but I just think that our deck is overall pretty well positioned to take on these types of decks, and I don't want to, overthink things, so just take out the card that's a 2-for-1 against you. We have a lot of answers to Liliana of the Veil anyways, and we have a lot of card draw, so I think we're going to be okay. This hand is solid. We'll keep. We'll probably get a turn 1 Triumph and then just fetch Snow Basics after that. Now that we have Dead of Winter in our deck, it's especially important so that we keep a high Snow Basic count, as Tarmogoyf can easily end up being a 5-6 in this matchup. Renin 6 is good. Generally, Renin 6 is not bad against us, but it also isn't amazing. And the reason why is it does threaten to ultimate, and if it does ultimate, then our opponent will likely win the game. But up until the ultimate, the -1 isn't great, as we'll just use our Kotals at instant speed. It does make them a little bit awkward, though, to be fair. As normally I'd be able to just play a Kotal on our opponent's end step here, but now I really have to think about if I want to, because I know that our opponent can just minus Renin 6. But generally what will end up happening is we'll work our way up, and then we'll have Wilderness Reclamation, Cryptic Command, bounce it to their hand, and from there we're able to just, kind of take over the game with some serious card advantage. We will happily veil this Inquisition. I, for one, expected the Inquisition. Okay, I'm gonna fetch up a Watery Grave here. Well, it's a bit awkward because we don't have any Misty Rainforest, which means we can't fetch the forest. I think it might just be time we accept these Icefang Cuddles are not going to be on for a little bit. Unless we draw an Astrolabe, of course, which would be a great draw. Playing the Snow Island there may have been a bit of a mistake. My thinking was that we want to keep our fetch lands because they represent Mystic Sanctuaries, but alternatively, if our opponent were to, fire off a discard spell or something, we might want to Icefang Codal and see if we could hit a Veil of Summer. So those small things, having the fetch in play, and then it doesn't even need to be cracked, and then we could just, play an island and get Veil of Summer the next turn. Also, that's really bad. Okay. Well, we can't do anything about it. So, yeah, that would have been another great reason to play a fetch land there, as we could have just played the Wilderness Wreck. Now we're hoping that we draw into a... Hoping we draw into a land or a removal spell. On a non-fetch land, to be clear. Yeah, that's why you gotta be clear. You gotta be clear when you ask for the draw. You gotta be very specific, or MTG will just come and screw you over. All right, there we go. Now we are talking. Let's attack Ashiok. Assuming our opponent doesn't have a discard spell here, I think we're in a good spot. Wilderness Reclamation will let us have Cryptic up. We can Cryptic, bounce their Ashiok, and then fetch, and just start looping Cryptics. We'll see if our opponent wants to minus their Renin 6 or keep marching towards the ultimate. We know that them trying to ultimate would not work out, but they don't know that. I mean, they also know we can just attack their Renin 6, so I think that plussing here would be a pretty big mistake from our opponent's side. Luckily, we have 2 cryptics. Hopefully, they don't have another discard effect. Lily. We're starting to face the Jund choker hold of Planeswalkers, but I think that we still have a pretty good chance of being able to draw out of this, given some decent draws. It's probably going to start with us bouncing Ashiok and drawing a card. I'm wondering what our opponent's last card is. Of note, they got 1 Mystic Sanctuary, so we won't have as many of those. Let's start with a cryptic, return target permanent to its owner's hand, draw a card. We'll fetch. Mystic Sanctuary. Cryptic on top. Push was not the draw we wanted. So if we just cast Yorion here, it forces them to ultimate, or to minus their Liliana and give it up. So I think we're going to do that. It's obviously we're not getting like maximum value or anything, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And in this case, I think that letting their Liliana tick up to 3 is going to put us in a much tougher position to win than just letting it stay at 2. Worth noting, we don't have a second green source right now, so fetching up a Mystic Sanctuary isn't necessarily free. We may want to fetch a breeding pool at some point. Also, this Renin 6 is about to ultimate. Our opponent currently doesn't have any super threatening spells, so maybe that's okay. We're not going to counter this Inquisition. opponent will get rid of our Yorion. That's alright. Ooh, Bloodbraid Elf, their last card, really? Oh, Huntmaster of the Fells. Interesting. So we can counter draw here, and we know they can't replay Ashiok. Counter target spell, draw a card. And then we can Mystic Sanctuary, Cryptic back on top. The issue being we know... Not sure. Okay. So because we lost one Mystic Sanctuary, we're losing one of our best plays here. I think we're a little bit priced into bouncing Renin 6. Bounce draw. If that's the case... Okay. We'll bounce draw Renin 6 now. See what we hit. Another land. That's pretty bad for us. Our opponent has exiled one breeding pool. We'll fetch in response, get our second green source. We're flooding out pretty badly here. But we do have some combination of draws. Fact of Fiction could be very powerful. Cryptic Command isn't bad. Something like an Ice Fang Codal into Ice Fang Codal. I think we have some possibilities here. Our opponent just didn't attack. That must have been a misclick. Our opponent's actually running really low on time, which I think might account for... All right, and they concede. Not how we want to win, but we will take the win regardless. Here, actually, so I think they were rushing, which caused them to make some play mistakes. But assuming they hadn't, or they didn't minus the Ashiok, what we could have done here is bounce Ashiok, draw a card, fetch, hope that we drew one more spell, which is possible. Astrolabes would not have done... Wow, we would draw a lot of Astrolabes. And well, I guess the hope was that we could have, played the Uro. But it didn't look like that was going to happen. Yeah, I'm not sure if we were out of this game, honestly, even if our opponent hadn't made those mistakes. Obviously, it wasn't looking great for us, but I think I could come up with, some situations where we're able to get back into it. So, yeah, we'll take the win. See you guys for round number 4.